In this video, I'm showing you how to assign materials in Houdini in a different way. There are, as you know, multiple ways of assigning materials in Houdini, from just using the material tab that you have available in all the renderers. You can use the material node inside of SOPs. You can use style sheets. You can use different methods also in Solaris. There are multiple ways. One of the most common one, and the one that I tend to use quite a lot, is just having in SOPs and creating collections based on the different parts of my asset. And those collections would be sometimes for material assignment, sometimes for geometry properties. They can be for any reason really. But I tend to create my collections both using Alembic groups or using group create. You can also create attribute wranglers. You can also import collections from other softwares. There are many ways of doing this. In this case, as you can see here, I'm just creating collections as I usually do using wildcards. So I'm using a group create node, and then I'm using wildcards. So basically I have three different collections. I have a sphere, I have a cube, and I have a torus. And then it is as simple as just adding a material node, pointing to the right collection and to the right material. So I have one for the sphere, one for the cube, and one for the torus. And then in my material library, I have three different shaders here. I have the sphere, the cube, and the torus. So at this stage, if I launch a render, this is what I get, right? You get what you were expecting, I guess. The sphere, the green cube, and the blue torus, both of them are three different parts of one single asset, one single Alembic, and I'm creating collections based on whatever shader assignment I want to do, and then I have different material assignments. Okay, so again, this is kind of like the most common way of doing this with complex assets, right? With complex assets, you would have one cache or potentially multiple caches if the asset is very complex. And then you would have multiple collections that again you can create in so many different ways, and then your material assignments. Another way of assigning materials in Houdini, and I wouldn't recommend this for huge crazy assets, but for mid-size, small, medium-size assets, instead of doing this, I want to disable these guys actually. You can have just a material, one material, as you see here, one material assignment. And this material assignment is going to be pointing to a master material. And in that master material, it can be as complex as you want. In this case, it's very simple, but it has basically three different shader layers. One for the sphere, one for the cube, and one for the sphere. So, you only have to deal with one material network and one material assignment. So this can be very useful sometimes, and it has its own advantages, of course. So to do that, what you need to do is create Primvars, and you probably are familiar with Primvars in Katana or Maya. And if you are exposed to RenderMan, you have been working with Primvars for a very long time, but maybe not in Houdini and Arnold. Who knows? So I have a subnetwork here where I'm creating my Primvars, and my Primvars are based on collections as well, right? I want to create a Primvar for the sphere, another for the cube, and another for the torus. And because up here I already have created my collections, I can just reuse them in my Primvars. So if you use an attribute create, I have them already here, but I'm going to show you from scratch. In this attribute create, I'm going to call this one sphere okay, I'm calling this one sphere attribute, cube attribute, and torus attribute. But anyway, I'm going to call this one just sphere. And the group here, here you have all your collections available. So I can just click on sphere, and I'm going to be including my previous collection in this Primvar. And here would be the name of your attribute. So you can name it as you want. You can even do like $OS, and then it will pick up the name of the node. Then you need to set this one to primitive, and you need to give it a value, a float value of 1. In this way, you are creating a primvar that is called, in this case, sphere, because it's the name of the node. So if you check here, you see that you have a prim attribute called sphere. Okay, so in that same way, I created sphere, cube, and torus. So if I check down here, I have those prim attributes here: cube, sphere, and torus. And again, this is very clever because I'm reusing my collections that I previously created. But if you don't have any collections, that's fine. You can just create them on the fly. So again, if you have an attribute create, you can just create the collection on the fly here. So I can say let path equal star, and I can just name my cube, and I can also include my sphere, for example. Right, set this one to primitive, and I'm gonna create, gonna rename this one $OS again, and this is a cube and a sphere, so I'm gonna type here cube sphere with a value of 1. So right now I'm creating a cube sphere primvar here, right? Which is exactly the same that I did here. I did a cube and torus, and I'm including that collection, a cube and a torus. So again, you can recycle collections previously made, or you can create your own collections on the fly. There you go. So now, let me enable these. I have assigned a master material. So if I jump into that master material, it is only one shader network that I have to deal with. And in here, what I'm doing is I'm just fetching shaders that I have outside. So this is one shader, this is another shader, and this is another shader. And I'm just doing a layer shader here. So this would be the base, or input 1, input 2, and input 3. Or if you don't want to fetch them, you can just create a shader here, right? And just add it to your layer shader. And this layer shader, of course, it can be as complex as you want. I strongly recommend you to fetch shaders because everything is going to be cleaner. And you know, if you have a complex asset, it is always going to be tidy and organized, and then you can have all your hard work here. You can have a massive network there. Right. And then to mix them, the only thing you need to do is create an user data float with the name of the primvar that you created. So in this case, I have a sphere primvar, and then I have a torus primvar. I don't need a cube primvar because that is the base layer. So the base layer, which is this shader, it is a green shader, as you can see there. It is assigned to everything, really. So basically, if I get rid of that and render, I'm going to be assigning the cube shader to everything. Right? Then if we connect the sphere to the input DOS, wait a sec. Right, nothing is really happening because well, there is no mix really. So I'm going to connect the sphere to the mix too. This is not updating because you probably need to restart the IPR. So if I reset the IPR, there you go. Now the sphere is actually working, and again, it's using as a mask the primvar. And finally, if I connect my torus, now you get everything working again, but this time using primvars, and you know, it's very tidy and organized because you only have one shader network to deal with and one material assignment. So that's pretty cool. And then here, what I have is, as you can see, it works with both layer shaders and mix shaders. So here, what I'm doing is I'm just mixing this layer shader with another mix shader, where I'm putting on top a yellow shader here. So as you can see, I'm not fetching anything as I did here. I'm just creating a shader on the fly. and I'm creating another user attribute, and this is the one that I created the material on the fly instead of reusing collections, which I call cube torus. So the cube and the torus would have a yellow shader. It is off now because it's disabled with this switch, but as soon as I enable this switch, we get a yellow shader on top of whatever we were using in this Primvar. Okay, let's set this one back to 0, and as you can see, everything is working. So yeah, just another way of working with materials in Houdini. And as usual, depending on the case, depending on your requirements, your specific asset, you may want to do one thing or the other. But this can be very, very neat for certain assets. This should work as well in Solaris, but for whatever reason, well, the reason probably Solaris being a beta and not very stable at this stage, it's not working very well for me. But here I have, I can show you, I have my, let me set this one to Solaris. I have a simple network here, where I am basically importing a USD that I wrote from SOPs, which is basically this guy, right? And this guy should have all the attributes. Actually, you know, when you do a SOP import in Solaris, you can import data, so you can import all the attributes. But at the same time, you can control that if you are actually, oops. There you go. That's why I don't use Solaris. Yeah, Solaris is still pretty much unusable for me. So I was saying that you can control whatever attributes you are exporting to USD, even from SOPs, when you're writing. If you're using the USD export, as you can see in the configuration tab, you can export things like groups, you can export attributes, you can do, you know, pretty much whatever you want to carry over to the LOPS stage. So as you can see here, I'm basically having all the attributes and all the Primvars and everything. Right, but then for whatever reason, when you are in Solaris, when I render this, as you can see, it's not actually picking up the attributes, so I'm not really sure why. I assume it's some kind of, well, I mean, you know, Solaris is in beta, and it's very buggy, and a lot of these things actually happen to me. But if you check one of the objects, whatever you have here, you can see the Primvars are actually here, right? So you see that Primvars cube torus, sphere, torus, so they are here, but they, for whatever reason, they don't work as expected. But it is weird because if I jump into my master material, if I switch this one, this cube torus attribute seems to be working, but not the others. So it's a little bit confusing. I'm pretty sure it's something related with Solaris not being ready just yet, but I wouldn't use this method with Solaris. Actually, I wouldn't use Solaris at all in production, even though some people are using it. Right, so this is it really. I think it's a very powerful and clever way of assigning materials, and all of you RenderMan users are already familiar with this, but now I'm just showing you how to use it with Arnold and Houdini. So that was it. Very quick video. Bye.